NaptownTuner here. It's time for me to make a quick reference video about this oil consumption issue because there's so much misinformation out there. There's so many people saying things and doing things and they think they are helping, but they're not. So you're gonna get the actual correct information from me right now. NaptownTuner here, by the way. Okay, so real quick, I've been working on this oil consumption stuff for the better part of the last 9 years. So I know a thing or two about it. First off, the biggest issue is with Audi, their 2.0T TFSI engines from 2009 to 2011. I took apart and put together almost every single one of them in my region. So yeah, I do know a few things about it. First off, if you don't know if you're looking for a car, if you're going to try to buy a car, it would be a good idea to call the dealership and ask for their service history and see if it's ever had, I mean, they don't want to do this and it's going to be difficult getting a hold of them, but ask the customer first. Has it had oil consumption update? Do you have any service records? Has it ever had the timing chain replaced? Has it ever had the timing chain tensioner replaced? Okay, those are the big ones. So the oil consumption issue, Audi did try a different piston in there. So their first direct injected engine came out in 2005 and a half, and it ended in about 2008. And then the engine that I specialize on this page is the TFSI engine. It's the second generation direct injected engine. Okay, like I say, the first 2 years had an oil consumption issue, but 2012 and better was supposed to be better, and it did have the revised piston in it, but we're still seeing some oil consumption issues. Why? Well, it all derives from direct fuel injection. Most of the cars in the past have had, okay, let's get this button on the other side so I don't mess that up again. Most of the other cars in the past, before technology has advanced, we had just the regular fuel injector at low pressure, and it was in the intake runner. Now, this direct injected technology, they put the fuel injector directly inside the combustion chamber. And that gives you lots of benefits. I can't get too off track, but it gives you lots of power and fuel economy benefits. But one of the downfalls is the carbon buildup. And it's not just Audi that's experiencing this. The carbon buildup, it's affected all the brands that have adopted direct injection. But more specifically, this piston ring design from 2009 to 2011 has been bad. Why? I'm going to show you why right now. It's because this oil scraper ring, I've got two of them right here, right in front of me. So the piston in these cars, there's 3 rings on it. There's 2 compression rings, and the bottom ring is the oil scraper ring. You see that little cutaway right here in the piston, the side of the piston? That's where the jet, there's an oil jet that sprays in the bottom of the cylinder bore up on the piston skirt. So if this oil scraper ring gets clogged, and that's what happens, it gets clogged up with carbon, it can no longer sufficiently scrape the excess oil away. What happens is it seeps past and burns in the combustion chamber. So let me tell you about what I just learned. I always suggest replacing the pistons with OEM pistons. After a little bit of research, I just learned this evening, actually, after digging through some things, because I have some aftermarket pistons, some of the cheap pistons that you'd be able to find on Amazon or eBay or some other places on the internet that you would not get from the dealership. And guess what? They have the same exact oil scraper ring that you find in 2009 to 2011. They have the bad design. The piston is the old design, but they're still selling the old design pistons because this oil scraper ring, you can see a little bit, it's got super tiny little holes. Okay, those are what get clogged up by the carbon. The new style piston ring, it's got large cutaways. It's got big, large rectangles rather than small holes. So this is a lot less susceptible to getting clogged up with carbon. And carbon it's just fuel that turns into crust, basically. So that crust gets clogged up here, and there's no way to fix it unless you pull the piston out of the engine and you either re-ring it or you put new pistons in it. So yes, an oil consumption issue from this engine is a piston. It's piston rings. There's a few other small things that you could do to help a little bit, but it's not gonna really help. Like some people say that you can put a breather on, and in the part 1 oil consumption test, they do a SVM with a valve overlap, and they put a new breather on it and they put a new front ring. It doesn't really matter. You can keep the same programming. You don't need the SVM, and you can just replace your pistons and you'll be fine. The issue, like I said, is this oil scraper ring. You want the updated style. So that means you can't buy the cheap pistons unless you want another oil consumption issue in another 60,000 miles or so, maybe less. Yeah, the new pistons do cost a decent amount. The new pistons are probably like less than $200 a piece. They're probably about $150 a piece or something. Maybe even more. Maybe there are more than $200 a piece. I haven't checked the price in a while. I did stock up a little bit, but I'm getting close to needing to buy a whole lot more in the future if I keep on doing these things. But yes, we do still have an oil consumption issue on the newer ones that still have the updated pistons with this style oil scraper. And what I'm going to try in the future, if you want me to try this, I need some audience participation. So that means shares are awesome. If anyone shares my videos, that's really cool because I'm getting the information out there and really helping people. And it really is helping people. So what I'm going to try is I'm going to try to find either one of my own cars or a customer car that has an oil consumption issue with either the old style piston or the updated style piston. I don't care. And I'm going to take some seafoam, if you've ever heard of that. It's some of the best stuff you can get to break up carbon. I'm going to heat it up really hot in my kettle in my house. And also I'm going to have the engine up to operating temperature. I'm going to take the spark plugs out, and each cylinder bore, cylinder spark plug hole, I'm going to pour and fill the cylinders with super hot seafoam. I might even overheat the engine a little bit. I might drain the coolant. Maybe not the first time. Maybe this. If I try it 2 different times and see which one works better. I might also overheat the engine a little bit and then also heat up the seafoam and pour it in there. And then I would crank the engine over a few times without the spark plugs installed to get the seafoam nice and flowing. And also I would spill some seafoam into the engine oil so that it can mix with the oil and squirt up through those oil jets and get to the bottom of this ring. So potentially that could be a fix that no one's tried before, and I'm going to experiment with it and try it. And if someone gets around to it before I get around to it, let me know. But the fix is OEM Audi pistons. That's what the fix for oil consumption is. Now, you're probably not going to be able to go to a shop and pay less than $4,000 for a piston job. It's going to probably cost over $5,000. Even if you just replace the pistons, most of the time you have to replace the timing chain tensioner if that's not already done. You have to replace the rear main seal. Sometimes, whenever I do it, I like to even put a rebuilt cylinder head on it. Because sometimes they have a lot of miles at that point, and if you're doing all this work and already taking the head off, it's nice to either get the cylinder head rebuilt or have one ready to put on. And a new cylinder head is going to cost a decent amount of money, probably over $2,000. And I've had experience with the Chinese cylinder heads that cost a little over $1,000, and they're junk too. I don't use those anymore. I put maybe 6 of them on different cars, and the bearings. If you want more information on those, I can show you more information on those in the future. But the bearing journals were cut bad and not all the way through, and one of them. I think the valve stem seal was messed up, either that or the valve guide and the valve stem seal, but it would have smoke on startup, and it was definitely in the cylinder head, and it was a brand new cylinder head, so I don't advise on those either. Let me think if I'm missing anything on this subject. You want to get, I'm going to stop right here, and if I can think of anything else, I'll add it. One quick thing is the 2009 to 2011 pistons/rods, they do have a smaller wrist pin, and the wrist pin is that pin right here in the middle of the piston. And then the 2012 up have a bigger wrist pin, a larger wrist pin. So some people have a misconception that you need to get the rods and the pistons for the newer style. No, you just need to buy pistons for your engine, for your VIN number at the dealership. So you keep your same rods and you just buy the updated pistons. Or the full story is, and Audi is the only company that messed with the piston design and they learned real fast. VW stuck with the same old piston design. And so they didn't have the oil consumption issue on a wide scale. They just had the ones that had the correct oil scraper ring, but still got clogged up with carbon. So stay away from long story short, stay away from aftermarket pistons. Buy OEM pistons if you want to do it right, if you want the correct quality. So once you get the new pistons, or once you put the updated pistons in, or fix the oil consumption issue, and you fix the timing issue, it's a great engine. I mean, it's awesome engine. I love these things. I'll be using these cars for the rest of my life. And they're very simple compared to most platforms. That's one of the benefits. They get better gas mileage. I say they're simple because everything's accessible. For instance, the timing chain is on the front of the engine. You don't have to, all the other Audi engines, the timing chain's on the back of the engine. And you literally have to pull the whole subframe with the engine and transmission down, and then you have to separate the engine from the transmission. Then you have to take a plate off the back of the engine, and then you have a series of like 3 different chains with the dual banks, and it gets crazy. So that's just one quick example of why this engine's so much more simple. You know, I can get the intake manifold off in, 10 or 15 minutes. I can get the water pump off and replace it in 20 minutes easy, probably 15, 10 minutes, really, if I try. The alternator comes off in 10 minutes or something, the belt, everything. Pretty much everything is very fast and easy on this engine. And, the expensive stuff would be, the big hurdle. The pistons, the timing chain tensioner, rear main seal. Those are the big ones. So you want to check the history. If you get a car that's had the updates already, you scored pretty big. And you can get them. That's why the prices have come down so much on these cars, because some of them have tanked the value, because there's cars floating out there in the used car world that are pretty problematic because they drink oil, they don't have updated timing components, and then people sell them instead of fixing them. So someone would go to the dealership and they would get quoted, hey, it's time to put an updated timing chain on it, or you got oil consumption issue, you need a $4,000 or $5,000 piston job. What do? They don't fix it, they unload it. And a lot of times they just ride it out until the timing chain breaks, and then it comes to someone like me, and I have to do pistons, timing chain, rebuild cylinder head. I have to dump a bunch of money into it, and that's why I don't make money on these cars anymore. These cars are more for the everyday person, because by the time I do all the engine work that needs done on these things, people don't want to pay what they're worth. For instance, I have an Avant, a 2011 Avant. I did all the work to it. Oh, dude, I'm way surprised it hasn't sold yet. I'm selling it for dirt cheap, and because that one even has a rebuilt cylinder head on it. And I've got it posted for $7,400 right now, and I haven't got a single hit on it yet in about 3 weeks. And usually they sell pretty fast, but for some reason this one, I'm really surprised. I used to be able to make money on these things, and now the people still want a decent amount for them broken, and no one wants to pay what they're worth whenever. And the newer ones are still worth some money, because like I said, 2009 to 2011 are the most problematic ones. So if I missed something, let me know in the comments. Until next time, NaptownTuner.